Hi, my name is Bethany. I am autistic and I also am an author, an illustrator, painter. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how I realized I was autistic, what the discovery process was like, what the diagnostic process was like, and what it's like now knowing that I'm autistic. And I had never, ever considered that I was autistic my entire life. So as a child, I always had this sentiment of wanting to go home. Even though I could be at home in my bedroom, I would just cry and wish with everything I had that I could go home. I just wanted to go home. And this is something that I've expressed in words I've said well into adulthood, of talking to friends or family or my spouse and just being like, I just don't understand, like, why can't I go home? Where is home? And it's been this concept that has been really difficult because I've just never felt like I've belonged. As a kid, this looked like, maybe I could get my letter to Hogwarts one day. Maybe I would turn into a mermaid when I was 16 and I could just swim off into the ocean. Like, this was something like, as a child, I just desperately wished to go home. And being a young kid, it's like thinking of like all the possibilities, like maybe my real family will come find me and take me away somewhere, because I just didn't feel like I belonged, not in this earth, not with my family. I just felt so different. I just always felt like the outcast of outcasts, and I genuinely felt different, but I couldn't see anything that was different. I just didn't get it. I felt like I was missing a memo. Being different has led to a lot of bullying, and it's almost as if the bullies can tell there's something different about you. And I constantly felt like, I have like full body chills. I constantly felt like on the first day of school, they drew a name from a hat and they pulled out my name and they were like, ooh, Bethany, she's the one we're all gonna gang up on. And it wasn't just students. It was students, it was teachers, it was staff members. And this ranged from like all of my school life. It wasn't just like one really bad school, and extended into the workplace with bosses and coworkers. And within all of them, it was all levels of bullying, all levels of abuse, from like emotional abuse to physical abuse to SA. There was just a lot. And I asked for help many times throughout my life, and a lot of people didn't take me seriously. I got called a liar a lot. And I wasn't lying, and I didn't know why people thought I was lying. And more often than not, I had to apologize for like the abuser's behavior, which led to more damage of me constantly thinking I was the problem in these abusive situations, which led to continued abuse because I just wasn't like, when you keep being told like, oh yeah, it's you're asking for this, or you're inviting this, or your behavior is doing this. You almost feel like you come to expect it. And I did come to expect it in relationships, in friendships, in normal interactions, from teachers to managers. Like every time there was like another person engaging in this behavior, it's just the way I was treated. And it became very normal of thinking like, yeah, this is just how life goes. And it's one of the reasons I ended up working for myself, because I was tired of being abused. And I thought, if this is what the workforce is, then I can't be a part of it. So yeah, it's one of the biggest reasons, one of many big reasons that led me to try to do my own thing. Yeah. In addition to like being different and the bullying, there's also social challenges with autism. I think in more professional situations, I can mask better, which is like what it sounds like putting on a performance, putting on a persona to like get through that situation, but it's like not healthy and it doesn't feel good. But that's how I've gotten through like a lot of like presentations or like book readings or things where I have to interact with the public, but it's really hard and exhausting. And like my facial expressions aren't right. And it's like, oh gosh, I'm not doing it right. Like my smile as I like get overwhelmed turns into this like look of fear. So yeah, social communication can be really hard. I think it also extends into like, I have a hard time with eye contact with people. I have a hard time saying people's names. It's really weird. I don't know. It's just one of those things that is like difficult. I'd rather be like, oh, hey, than call somebody by their name because sometimes their name doesn't feel right. And this leads into the workplace and stuff to where it has led to continued abuse in workplaces. But even like being unable to like do basic communication things, like my first job when I quit for a better opportunity, I went into my boss's office and just started like shaking and trembling and bawling and apologizing for quitting. I felt so bad because for me, it's like, I accepted this position. I decided to do this. You invested your time in teaching me how to do all these things. And now I'm leaving. I felt so guilty. It felt like breaking up with someone. Like I didn't like it at all. And I felt so bad. And I have a really hard time quitting jobs. They've either all ended in crying or I just like call off and I'm like, hi, it's Bethany and I'm never coming back again. Like, bye. Because I won't say it to people's face. Yeah, it's kind of bad. And with problems in the workplace, it comes with like, I have a like 3-month burnout in traditional work. I will work at a place for 3 months and then I'm burnt out. I'm tired of the job, tired of the schedule, tired of the people there. And like, I can't physically continue on. And then I quit and find a new job. And this was a trend since I was starting work. Every 3 months, there would be a new job. I think the longest I lasted at a place was like a year. And that was because I was completely working alone, running almost an entire small business by myself, which was one of the most accommodating things because I didn't really have to deal with other employees being there. So yeah, the abuse only came from the customers at that point, which ultimately was one of the reasons why I quit, because it was still the same weird level of abuse from customers in a workplace that I just ended up feeling really, really unsafe. And I talked to my bosses about it, and they didn't seem to care. And I felt really, really scared and unsafe most times, to where good customers who noticed this would often like stay in the store with me. And there was like a few people who ended up becoming like makeshift store guards who kind of hung out and realized that I wasn't safe and I wasn't comfortable. Another challenge with autism is the sensory challenges. So like every single day growing up, I would have a waffle for breakfast, had to be toasted just the same way with butter, then syrup, then microwaved, and then I would eat it. And it had to be that specific order or else it tasted like bananas. And I hate bananas. That was breakfast every single day until I had to move out, which was just 2 weeks after I turned 18. And then I couldn't afford waffles. So then I just didn't eat. But yeah, that was my breakfast every single day growing up. And then for dinner, I would eat chicken nuggets, When I was younger, I had been punished for not like eating foods, but I have a really big problem. I still have a problem with textures. So like things that are like too squishy, like all the time I was being given like canned peaches and canned pears, canned fruits and vegetables that are just like slimy and gross. And quite literally would be like the equivalent of asking someone to eat a live slug and put it in their mouth and then swallow it. But yeah, I had a lot of food issues down to being in school. I couldn't eat the lunch. I was on free and reduced lunch, so I had to eat the school lunch. But like this one day in middle school, I found a cockroach underneath the burger bun. And then I couldn't eat anything from that school again. It's one of those things to where like once something burns me, like not literally, but figuratively, like once I get like a bad piece of like something, then I can never eat that thing again. And I couldn't eat at that cafeteria, so I was really hungry and I didn't have food. And I ended up eating one mayonnaise packet every single day for lunch throughout middle school. Yeah. More than food, sensory sensitivities also lead into like clothing. Like you'll notice I wear these big sweaters quite frequently, this sweater in my videos. It's one of my comfiest sweaters and it makes me feel cozy and safe. So I often throw it on before I film because I'm like, oh, I like this one. Other sensory sensitivities come in the form of like light, things being too bright. That's definitely one that gets to me. Like the bright gray skies are the absolute worst. Or driving at night with headlights is really, really difficult and frustrating. And then I wear a lot of like light blocking glasses, whether that's sunglasses or I have those, you guys have seen those like amber tinted glasses that I wear and really, really love for like cutting out computer lights and screen lights and makes it a lot easier to look at with your eyes. But also one of my biggest sensories is sound. So that looks like wearing headphones for me. I've always worn headphones, even if I was like tucking it behind my ear in high school with a little like earbud and listening to music in class instead of like listening to the chatter of all the students or like the running of the AC or the buzzing of the fluorescent lights. It was just one of the senses I could control. And even in college, I wore like when over-ear headphones started coming back, I had a big chunky pair that like sealed around my whole ear. And I would wear those because they pretty much like dampened sound. And then I'd plug the plug. I just like tuck it into my pocket and not plug it into anything. So I could just have a little bit of silence. And then even recently I wear noise canceling headphones and I wear those pretty much all the time now. And all of this was things I was doing before a formal diagnosis. I just kind of thought it helped with anxiety, which I thought was just my main issue, was just being anxious all the time, being nervous all the time, having all these like swirly feelings all the time, and like having a panic attack sometimes up to 5 times a day. Like I thought I was just very big anxiety person. Another thing I do as an autistic person is stimming. So my main stim is swirling my hair. I've always gotten in trouble for twirling my hair, and from teachers being like, oh, you look like you're stupid, or friends being like, stop, it doesn't make you look cute, or you're gonna dry out your hair oils and you're gonna give yourself split ends. Like everybody was like, don't twirl your hair. Spinning is another one. Or biting my bottom lip a lot. So much so to where I've gotten like sores on my lips from biting so much. Because it's one of my, this is one of my stims. The more I've like worked for myself and kind of been isolated, definitely like I've always had the like flapping stem, where like if I'm excited, like little like yays, and that's definitely gotten more. Talking with my hands could be considered a stim. And yeah, I also like, you can stim vocally. So I like sing little songs that I make up all the time about like things I'm doing. And it makes it feel like you're living in a Disney movie. So yeah, I definitely don't mind stimming. It's something I always got yelled at, like rocking in your chair. One of the ways I would do the rocking movement is I always would go to like the playground throughout my life, throughout middle school, throughout high school, and just swing for hours and hours and hours to de-stress from a really long day. And a lot of those stims I had to make socially acceptable, like swinging instead of just sitting there and rocking, or, you know, twirling my hair instead of stimming in a way that's not appropriate. A lot of times I'll just do that because a lot of people won't notice you're doing this, and you can just kind of tuck it down in a way and just keep going with your fingers. Yeah, that's something. And it's important to say that even neurotypical people can experience all of these things. Everybody can experience this on a level. The thing that makes these autistic traits and makes me an autistic person is that I experience them nonstop. So the sensory stuff is nonstop. It's like too bright outside right now. It hurts not wearing glasses for the video. Hearing my own voice is getting really annoying. It's too loud. It just is one of those things that like the stimming never stops. The sensory stuff never really stops. It's just trying to like get it to a point where you can like get through the day. But yeah, these things that I've talked about like affect me all the time. Like the food stuff, every single meal, it's like, oh no, is today going to be the day where I can't eat this thing anymore? And it happens, and then that will be out for years. And then I'll try it again one day and see if it will work. So it's difficult because yeah, every day is a challenge, not to mention with the overwhelms and the burnouts and the meltdowns that I used to think were panic attacks can literally lead to like loss of motor skills, loss of function, to where I won't be able to continue the task that I'm working on, whether that's work or cooking or cleaning or something of that, like any motor skills will be lost. Even fun things like drawing can be lost. So it's something that affects me nonstop always. So talking about more how I misunderstood what certain things were, it comes with a lot of misdiagnoses. I was always called like quirky or shy or introverted, or I was an extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert. Like all of these little labels that went around, like, oh, you're just so smart that sometimes it's hard for you to find your words because you have so many thoughts, and you're gifted and you're this and you're that. And a lot of times I was just written off for like, oh, that's just the girl thing, or oh, you're just so picky, or you're so fussy, or like you're such a perfectionist, like all of these things, to where every time I had like a legitimate concern, or I brought up something, or like I was displaying signs of autism, it was constantly dismissed of like, oh, she's twirling all the time, she must want to be a dancer, she must want to be a little ballerina, not realizing that like that was a form of a stim, his spinning, or like not being able to like form words. So I also have ADHD. And one of the things is like, there's like a million things I'm thinking about right now, to extensive detail, at all times. And it sometimes gets difficult to maintain this conversation when there's like a million more happening in my head. But it's one of those things to where as a child, I was diagnosed, I don't know, I guess I can't say diagnosed. I was tested for gifted. I scored with a really high IQ and was accepted into that program. But even I was reading my testing papers because I have them from gifted, and they only did half the test before I had a score well above the range of acceptance, which is the range of acceptance. I think you have to score above a 135. At least that's what it was back then. And then I was also really sick during the testing. So I had a fever and a double ear infection, which is why they only did half the test. But the person who is conducting the test, I remember him. He was really mean to me. And even in his notes, he's like, she's whiny. She has issues like verbalizing things, autism. And definitely was saying that even though I would test it at a high IQ, I wasn't applying myself. And this is something that teachers have always left on my notes of like, I would get report cards and have straight A's. And then it would be like, but Bethany needs to try harder. She's not trying hard enough. And I would get the highest score, like on standardized testing, there would be like all these little bubbles. And then way over there would be my dot. And then they would tell me like, oh, but you're not trying hard enough. And it was one of those things that was really frustrating because like, yes, I was trying, but like, also it formed this like thing to where I like never thought I was good enough, because even when I performed at my best, even when I got 100, it wasn't 110%. I didn't find a way to go above and beyond. And when I did find a way to go above and beyond, it could have been better. I had more in me that I could have given. And it led to this like really negative thing of like, I just was never good enough. And this was from like teachers to family. I found out as an adult that I am also dyslexic and I have dyscalculia. So I have a really big and hard time with spelling and with numbers. And often I can switch letters and numbers in addition to switching letters and numbers. So I have like some of my old papers and like I can very clearly see now that I was dyslexic. And I started to struggle in math in middle school when algebra was introduced, because like the letters and numbers just kept getting jumbled and I started performing really badly. And no one ever noticed. So when it's like, oh, you're not trying hard enough, I was trying really hard because I was trying to overcome being autistic and having ADHD and having to deal with dyslexia and dyscalculia and still perform at the top level. And then still that level just was not good enough because I wasn't applying myself hard enough. So yeah, I think it was one of those things to where like the dangers of a misdiagnosis is just like so much negative self-talk that continues on. Like no matter what I achieve, there's always like that little voice in the back of my head that's like, well, you could have done better. So yeah, it's pretty damaging to not be diagnosed at a young age. So I came to a turning point in my life where I decided I needed help. I was Googling like every day, I need help me. And I knew nothing was going to be there. But I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know what was wrong. I was feeling immense burnout. I was just so tired. I was so exhausted. And what I thought were panic attacks were happening so frequently, to where I wasn't functioning anymore. I couldn't draw, to illustrate my books. Writing became really difficult. And the things that I used to be really good at, I couldn't do. I had stopped painting and had lost the ability to paint. And, it just came to this turning point in December of 2023 where I was like, in 2024, I've got to figure this out. Like I have to change. Otherwise, like I was struggling so much. I just didn't know what was going to happen. So I started Googling and researching and went down this huge rabbit hole and eventually saw autistic burnout, which really described me, but it was exclusive for autistic people. So I started researching autism. And then I was really confused because I was like, I don't understand why these things are autistic traits because I do all of them and I'm not autistic. So yeah, it was a little bit of a weird moment to be like, oh, I might be autistic. And then I was pretty confident I was. So I wasn't sure if I should get formally diagnosed or not. But I think it was such a big thing to think about that I wanted to be sure that I was autistic and there wasn't something else going on. Because at this point, I had come to such like a breaking point that I didn't want to miss something if something else had been going on. Like if I had some sort of mental health condition, or if this was really bad anxiety, or that I was having all these panic attacks. So I thought, why not go through and get a diagnosis and have them check me for everything and just go for the full rundown and see what I was working with so I would know how to move forward. So that's what I did. I ended up finding a team of neuropsychologists who specialize in adult autism. Adults are often overlooked because a lot of times autism's thought of like a child's like illness where they think people grow out of it, but autism is a neurodevelopmental condition where you're born with it. I can't even say with it because autism isn't something you have. You're just born autistic. You can have an autistic mind or an allistic mind, which is not autistic. And like that's just the way you are. Same with ADHD. You are born with ADHD. Or you're not. And so I wanted to find somebody who understood what autism was, how it could display, and especially if I was autistic and ADHD, trying to find someone who understood that would display differently. So autism is different for every single person who has it. It doesn't look the same in two people. That's why it's a spectrum. And when you have co-occurring neurodevelopmental conditions or co-occurring events in your life, like if you have more than like autism, if you're autistic and have OCD, or if you're autistic and have anxiety or depression or any other sort of diagnosis, it all displays differently. So I went ahead and I made an appointment, and this is what the diagnostic process looked like. So the first appointment was an hour meeting with a neuropsychologist. I did not realize I was meeting with a neuropsychologist. I thought it was like an intake session. So I definitely didn't understand that this was like a part of the diagnostic process. And I got on for that meeting. And the person on the other side, who is a neuropsychologist, said, "Are you ready for your test?" And I was like, "What test?" Oh my gosh. Like, what am I being tested on? And I didn't really, like I said, I didn't really understand. I thought this was just going to be like an intake session or even like an informational session to talk about like why I thought I was autistic. And yeah, they ended up asking me a ton of questions from like different displays of what I thought were autistic symptoms, or different things in life, or have I ever experienced this or that, or talk about different things. And it was overwhelming. But yeah, I had prepared a whole like notebook. I had gone through every paper that I have from my past. I've gone through photos. I found like everything and I put together this whole like, this is why I am autistic folder. And I painted a picture to depict what it looked like because I couldn't really put it into words. And I was like, yeah, I have all these things. And I thought I was going to save those for like the real appointment. And yeah, I didn't have any of them for the first appointment because I didn't know what it was. And at the end of that appointment, the that person told me that I was autistic, but it was not a formal diagnosis because I had to go through the rest of the steps. And then we got off the call and I ended up having a heart attack and going to the hospital. It scared me so much. I wasn't scared of being autistic. I was scared that like an hour conversation told somebody something that I wish I could have known my whole life, and that explained so many things. And it was this like rush of like frustration and confusion and all of these things of like, how did nobody know this? How did nobody see this? How did I miss this? How could I do these things? And that person was just really confident that I was autistic. And I couldn't understand like how after 1 hour, they could be so certain. It really just like broke my brain and led to my first heart attack. So the second appointment, be prepared. The second appointment was a testing scenario. You were supposed to meet with another neuropsychologist who did different puzzles with you, different scenarios with you, and all these things. But the first neuropsychologist thought this was probably a bad idea for me because they were worried about my social interaction being too poor. And they were already confident I was autistic, so I got to skip that part, and then I just did several hours and hours and hours of questionnaires, and I got a lot more questionnaires than other people who have gone through the diagnostic process to sort of make up for that interaction. But I was too autistic for the autism test. So I think that's deserving of an award or something. Because I've had friends go through this diagnostic process. Now that I've been through it, I've met others, and that was fun to learn. But after that big testing session, which may or may not involve another person's evaluation of you, I guess they did evaluate me just by observation, but I didn't get to talk to anybody, so I kind of feel left out, but that's okay. Then the third is going over all of your results, which is about another hour, where you get to ask questions and they tell you everything that you do wrong, but they don't tell you why it's wrong. So that was a lot to take in as well. And that's when I found out I was autistic, ADHD, and that I have PTSD from all of these experiences of growing up undiagnosed, which is another big factor of missing or having like early diagnosis and early support of having neurodevelopmental conditions or being neurodivergent. So, it's a lot of people get diagnosed with PTSD from being abused for being simply the way they are and existing the way that they are. After being diagnosed formally and being told that I'm autistic, I cried. But I wasn't sad that I'm autistic. Again, I was sad that I didn't know. I was sad for my younger self who had so many struggles that had a very clear explanation, or that I had a reason for why I never really fit in, or I had a reason for why everybody was singling me out. They were singling me out because I was autistic. I tried to fit in so much, and I tried to follow all the rules, and even following the rules, it was just never enough. I think I just feel so bad that like I didn't know why I didn't fit in. I couldn't figure it out, and I didn't know why I always felt targeted. It was always me. It was one of those things where even my friends had a joke of like, it's always going to be me. If something bad's going to happen, if somebody's going to be targeted, if we go out and there's like a bad person, they're going to come for me. So everybody else is safe. And yeah, I didn't know why that was the case, but yeah, it was. After being diagnosed, I sort of went through this regression of just looking at every single experience and realizing, it's because I'm autistic. I was autistic there. That was an autistic response. That was autistic. Or like understanding that like I take things literally all the time, and that led to a lot of misunderstandings. And it's been months since I've been diagnosed, and I have not stopped processing and remembering so many things that I never really put together as me being different or me being autistic. So it's been a lot, but I'm really, really glad I got diagnosed. And I do want to say self-diagnosis is valid. It was thousands of dollars to go through the diagnostic process, and not everybody has access to that. It was months and months and months of waiting, which was grueling, especially between the appointments, when you have like a 2-month wait between the next appointment or just waiting on the results. It was a long process that was not fun, but now knowing, I do really feel a lot better. I now know that those panic attacks I thought were panic attacks. Yes, some of them were, but most of them were sensory overwhelm that led to an autistic meltdown, which I now know if I start to feel what I used to think was a panic attack coming on, now I'm aware of like, wait, what is causing this? Oh, it's really loud. Like, let me plug in my headphones. Let me go isolate myself for a bit and calm down from the sensory overwhelm. Or like, oh, it's too bright in here. Let's shut off all the lights. Like, I think it's gotten to be one of those things where I can understand myself so much more. To before being diagnosed, it's like when I started to feel these things, I'm like, oh, you're just stupid, you're broken, like you're dumb, nobody else is dealing with this, like you're just looking for an excuse, you're lazy, like just all this really, really bad negative self-talk, mimicking what everyone else has always told me throughout my life, when like, oh, you're just being dramatic, oh, you're just being this or that, or these things really aren't hard for you, you're just being lazy tonight, like, of course you can cook dinner, like stop pretending like you can't. Of course you can do this basic task. Like it's one of those things to where it's like, now knowing there's just so much more grace I can have for myself. And it's hard. Like it is hard to rewire my brain to learn to love myself. When all I've ever done was be scolded for being the way I am. And now I have the ability to love all the things I do. And this is a common experience for a lot of people who get diagnosed, but they often become more autistic, or in my case, both more autistic and more ADHD after being diagnosed. And it's one of those things that's a part of unmasking. And even alone in my room, I would be masking and not even realize it. And it's one of those things to where I've been allowing myself to stim more. I've been allowing myself to embrace like the natural like excitement of all the positive sides of autism, because yes, so much of it is debilitating. So much of it is such a challenge. This world was not designed for autistic people. So it's really hard to fit in. And there are not accommodations. And there's nothing when you're diagnosed, you're just told, congratulations, this is your new life. And that's it. They gave me like a list of like 20 things. Oh, listen to a meditation app and, eat as healthy as possible and go to the gym. Like everything everybody else tells you, like, oh, just try to be a healthy human. Like, it's frustrating because it's like there wasn't like this like, oh, here is some help, or here are some people who can support you. It's like, oh, rely on people in your life. And it's like, cool, I'm autistic. I don't talk to anybody else. So it's one of those things that is really, there's not this like golden ticket. There's this like rhetoric online that being autistic is trendy or cool, and that just doesn't make sense at all. Or that like you get clout or positivity from it. I've been speaking up that I'm autistic, and my numbers on every platform, including book sales, have significantly dropped since I've been sharing about it. Yeah, it's not been a positive thing to say. A lot of people think now my information that I share is not valuable now that I'm autistic, because it's like, oh no, she was playing pretend. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm still the same person. I'm still me. I still am a valuable part of society, even though now I'm aware that I'm autistic. It's not that I just magically caught the autism. You can't do that. You're born with it. It never goes away. So yeah, it's been difficult, but it's one of the reasons why I've decided to share about being autistic, because not everybody has the ability to share. And if I was in a traditional workforce place, I would not be sharing that I was autistic because of the stigma. But because I'm in a place where I do work for myself, I feel like I sort of have an obligation to share my experiences and to try and help remove the stigma that being autistic does not make you less. I am not any less than I was before. I'm not any worse than I was before. It's like, now that I am an autistic author, it doesn't take away or give me any difference of like, oh, well, she's only like, and she's like only had success because she's an autistic author. Like, you know, that mentality. And I've already seen it in comments. I've already seen it in private messages. I've already seen it within my own friends and family who don't understand. There's this stigma, and I just don't understand how one little word can change a person's view of you. But even with the negative, there's been a lot of positive, you know, healthy people in my life have either been indifferent about me being autistic and ADHD, and the best ones have been embracing of it, to where like now I feel so much more myself than I have in years and years and years. And I'm really grateful to those people, because there's a level of self-expression from being excited about like the positive side of being extra sensitive to sensory things, like feeling the wind and getting like genuine happiness out of feeling wind brush across your skin, or seeing an animal and like absolutely like getting so excited and squealing and like, woo, I seen a groundhog, like, and being so excited about seeing a groundhog every single time. They're just the cutest. And not being scolded for, oh, you're too loud. Why are you so excited? It's just the groundhog. It's like being able to be myself, being able to feel that like immeasurable amount of joy that a lot of autistic people can experience. And for me, autism comes with being hyper empathetic. So I feel so much more than an average person. And I've always known I was hyper empathetic. But yeah, the amount that I feel is a lot all the time. I feel like I have the emotions of like two people, to where things are just so much more intense all the time in the way I feel and see and express myself. And yeah, I can genuinely say I am happy I'm autistic. I'm proud I'm autistic. Even with the challenges, finding out has been such a wonderful thing. And I'm so grateful to have my autistic brain that led me to hyperfixate on trying to diagnose myself, and that hyperfixated on all things autism for months and months and months, and really found out everything I needed to about being autistic, so I could get help. And I love the part of autism and ADHD that does bring me such passion and such drive to do the things I want to do, from deep diving into authorship or learning how to illustrate or becoming an artist and getting to see my work in galleries over the past several years. And there are wonderful sides to it, as well as it is a big disabling thing as well. And I think it's important to share both the beautiful and the challenging side of it, because while I will definitely be sharing about the wonderful things, it doesn't change the fact that every single day is a challenge. And even somebody who may be perceived as having higher support needs may have lower support needs, or if somebody is perceived as having low support needs, they may have high support needs. So it's something to where if you are on the spectrum, you need support. I've always known I've needed support. I've always had my person with me who is literally my other half and has made a living so much better. And it's been difficult. Like, life has been hard. I think it's one of those things where I get to forgive myself. It's been really difficult. I always thought it was because I was completely on my own, 2 weeks after I turned 18. So very, very, very fresh adult, and just having the entire world thrown at you, from college to figuring out how to pay bills, and that water costed money, and realizing all of this very quickly, and having to grow up in the blink of an eye. And yeah, it was difficult, and I'm really proud of myself. Even the neuropsychologist, one of the most valuable things about being diagnosed is they said they could not believe that I had graduated high school with how severe my ADHD symptoms are. They could not believe that I did well in school. They couldn't believe I graduated from college. And they were incredibly impressed that I had done all of this, and that sentiment alone felt so powerful, because everyone has always told me that I'm not enough and I'm not trying hard enough. And that was the first time I heard somebody tell me that they could not believe that I was capable of doing so much on my own without help. And I have had my now husband with me alongside from the very start. We were both very young kids together, both kicked out of the nest right when we were little babies. And we have been together through it all. So I definitely can say a lot has not been completely alone. But it was really, really wonderful to have somebody reframe autism in this beautiful way, and my struggles now have a word: autistic and ADHD, or AuDHD. And I get to finally start to feel proud of myself and proud of who I am. And yeah, it's wonderful. I highly recommend, getting a formal diagnosis if you can afford it, if you think you need one. But I do want to say self-diagnosis is really valid. If you have somebody in your life who thinks they may be autistic, or is autistic, or is ADHD, it's just really important to support them and know that they're not choosing to be a certain way, and that it's really important to hear them and hear their experiences and to not invalidate them and to know that this is just a part of who we are and to accept that person just as they will accept you, and to not try to make them fit in a neurotypical box, because no matter how hard we try, we will never, ever, ever fit into that box. And I do have a children's book coming out about being autistic. And if that is available for pre-order when this video comes out, there's going to be a link in the description. But if not, sign up for my mailing list. That way you can be notified when new books publish. I hope this has helped at least explain autism for people who may not be familiar with it. And if you are autistic or think you may be autistic, I'm just really happy to share, and I hope some of this resonates or helps give words to things you can't explain. And I don't want anybody to feel bad about being neurodivergent. Be proud if you're neurodivergent. Be proud if you're autistic. Be proud if you're ADHD. Like, these things, yes, are challenges, but there's also so much to be proud of yourself for. And I think that's the most valuable thing I have learned since being diagnosed. So thanks for listening.